virtue signaling, and fake positivity, the path to a shallow life. You see, this avoidance-based mindset is a fast track to nowhere. But worse than that, it leads to a surface-level, disingenuous existence where everything looks fine on the outside, but on the inside it's just empty optimism and thought-terminating cliches holding it together, the avoidant, unproductive worldview. People who live in constant discomfort, avoidance, and conflict dodging end up communicating in a language that's essentially nonsense, thought-terminating cliches, and hollow buzzwords that sound deep but mean nothing. It's the conversational equivalent of wallpapering over cracks in the wall. It looks okay for a while, but it's only a matter of time before the whole thing comes crashing down. And if you think I'm being harsh, just consider the results. What happens when you rely on phrases like, let's just stay positive, or good vibes only? Absolutely nothing. Problems go unsolved, issues fester, and eventually everything you've been avoiding comes back with interest. If your default response to a conversation or challenge consistently derails it, undermines it, or leads it to a place where nothing actionable can happen, then let's be clear, your approach is ineffective. If a belief system or way of thinking continually drives discussions into a dead end, where nothing meaningful or productive emerges, it's not a stretch to say that approach is fundamentally flawed. Because what is an ineffective way of thinking if not one that fails to produce results? It's as simple as that. Virtue signaling and fake positivity, the ultimate distractions. We live in an age where people are addicted to virtue signaling. They don't want to be right or effective. They just want to look good. They'll chime in with, we should all just be kind, or everything happens for a reason, and expect a round of applause. But here's the thing, that's not helpful, it's not insightful, it's the intellectual equivalent of handing out balloons at a shipwreck. All the virtue signaling and fake positivity in the world won't fix a real problem. In fact, it just adds to it by pretending it's not there. They don't lead to effective, productive, or meaningful actions. They're there to provide a momentary emotional comfort that dissolves as soon as reality taps you on the shoulder and reminds you that no, things don't magically improve because you threw a positive platitude at them. Thought-terminating cliches, the silent conversation killers. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the concept of a thought-terminating cliche, buckle up. These are phrases people use to shut down a conversation, either intentionally or because they simply can't engage beyond surface-level thinking. They're the conversational equivalent of pulling the plug when the conversation gets too real or too challenging, just to pivot away from discomfort and steer the conversation into a safe but ultimately useless territory. And here's where things get interesting. If a person consistently uses these thought-terminating cliches, derails discussions, or pivots to unrelated topics, it's not a wild assumption to say that they might be doing this on purpose. Or maybe they're just habitually avoiding real engagement because they're incapable or unwilling to contribute meaningfully. Either way, the result is the same, a dead-end conversation that solves nothing, explains nothing, and leaves everyone just as clueless as before. What does this really say about them? There's an old saying, you know a tree by its fruit. If someone's thoughts, beliefs, or conversational habits consistently lead to inaction or confusion, then it's safe to say that what they're doing isn't working. A way of thinking is judged not by how good it sounds, but by what it produces. And if all it produces is frustration, derailments, and a pile of unsolved problems, then that way of thinking is ineffective, period. This avoidance, this constant pivoting to unrelated topics or using positivity as a shield, often signals one of two things. Either this person is purposely avoiding the issue, or they're so habitually disconnected that they can't engage meaningfully. Either way, it points to someone who's not equipped to deal with life's challenges in a real, productive way. And that's not just annoying, it's a liability. Because when life throws a curveball, and it always does, these people are going to be blindsided. Their avoidance, their insistence on empty optimism and virtue signaling leaves them woefully unprepared for real conflict or discomfort. The result, a life of surface-level disappointment. At the end of the day, a life built on these habits isn't just ineffective, it's unsatisfying. And let's be honest, if someone can't communicate or think in a way that leads to productive, meaningful action, then they're not just ineffective, they're actively contributing to their own dissatisfaction. Because real growth, real solutions, and real understanding come from facing discomfort, engaging in meaningful dialogue, and having the guts to move past empty optimism and virtue signaling. Conclusion, the hard truth. So, What's the takeaway? If a conversation or way of thinking continually undermines its own potential and ends up in a place where nothing actionable can be done, then it's not just ineffective, it's broken. And if someone keeps steering things in that direction, it's either intentional or a sign of deep-seated avoidance. You can paint over the cracks all you want, but at the end of the day, the foundation's still weak. And until that's acknowledged and dealt with, no amount of good vibes only or empty cliches or political slogans is going to make a bit of difference.